the first topic that we had tonight, the no spring games for the major programs, Garrett. It seems like it's a watershed moment where, sure, you could maybe get away with some programs like Missouri saying, logistically, it just doesn't really make sense for us this year. We've got some stadium renovations, this, that, and the other. And then you've got schools like Nebraska and Ohio State and Texas that are like, yeah, we don't really love our players being poached by other schools after they get to watch our spring game. Maybe they see us, a sophomore who's buried on the depth chart. He's not going to play this year. Insert program X who comes in and says, but you can play here. And suddenly they're in the portal, right? We know this goes on in the back channels of social media, the under the table deals. So I guess my first question for you, fair or foul, spring games being canceled is actually a good thing for the stability of college football.
Uh, no, I don't think so. And it goes so much further than a lot of things. I think one of the tweets I saw, and I can't remember who posted it to save my life, but one of the tweets I saw that kind of made me go like, yes, this was someone talking about the fact that because the game has become so dang expensive and inaccessible just for the average fan, or if you're a family, you went to that college, you got a couple of kids, you want to buy, 4, 5, 6 tickets and go have a day out, enjoy a little like frozen lemonade thing or a hot dog or something. You're going to be in for a couple of $100 for most games if you're sitting and you're, shaking hands with God. You're so high up, right? So if you're in that experience, the spring game makes lots of sense. You get to watch your team. It's not going to be a loss because you can't lose a spring game. It's going to be a fun environment. They do like crowd work and there's like lots of fun community events. They'll bring back kind of legacy players to play a little flag at halftime or something. It's fun. It's a good time for everyone. Even my wife and I have been able to scoot down for a couple at A&M, right? We're Aggies, so we've been able to scoot down to a couple at A&M and enjoy that. When in some years it's tough to make it to a game because the ticket price is so gosh dang expensive. And it's just kind of unfortunate because it's going to remove access once again for a lot of people. I'm going to remove you and your ability to kind of see the games like you normally would. But from a talent perspective and the poaching talent and the portal implications and all of that, I really have a tough time feeling sorry for all these big programs like, oh, boo hoo, your good depth is getting poached. All you have to do is wave some dollar bills at everybody else in the smaller school's main player because you saw a highlight on Sports Center or something like that. You don't have to do hardly any work. At least, these small schools are going through and scouting your spring game and doing some sort of evaluation. All you got to do is say, oh, that guy had 1,500 yards receiving for small school out of the Sun Belt. Yeah, he's going to be, next big thing at, University of Texas or whatever. I have a hard time feeling bad for some of these programs. It just, I understand you don't want to put your program in a vulnerable position, but at the same time, if they were good enough to be cracking the starting lineup, you put them in there anyways. This game has become so transactional anyways. So I don't think it's great for the sport. I think it's a logical conclusion, right? I can't tell you that if I was running a big program, I wouldn't do the same thing. But it's unfortunate for the sport. It's indicative of where we're going, and it's just kind of unfortunate for the whole thing.
I think it is, in a word, I think it's a further evolution of the corporate nature that this sport is becoming, right? As more and more TV dollars flood in and there's
Yeah.
more money on the line for a couple of suits and boardrooms, the fan experience is quickly going by the wayside, at least the
Hmm.
fan experience that can be easily monetized
Yeah.
and extrapolated across multi-million, multi-billion dollar media rights deals, right? Because at the end of the day, that's all that we as fans are good for when it comes to the two super conferences and the Big Ten and the SEC. How can those fans be manipulated now into tuning in and behaving the way that we want so that the TV numbers look great enough and we get to continue to push that dollar amount higher?
Yeah.
That's where we are in college football. And our last episode was Sam Kahn. He talked about many of the same things where now just a couple of stakeholders essentially determine the outcomes of not the games themselves, but the policies and the direction of the sport. And we pontificated for a little bit about how a collegiate football league, right, the professional
Hmm.
version of this game, is probably right around the corner. I do wonder if maybe going to a professional model would allow the spring games to come back, because then if you have collective bargaining, if you have a way to tie players to institutions, whether they're employees or not, then at least this proposed issue of players stealing goes away. But I
Yeah,
think the health of it is also a big factor as well. And the player safety side, they just played the longest season in college football history, right? This
yeah,
last year. I mean, we as fans were tired by the national championship. There was real fatigue, and we just had to watch the games. We didn't have to practice and play and study and do all of that.
yeah.
So I certainly see both sides. It is unfortunate, though, that I do think whether or not we were having the health discussion, the C-suite would not really care.
Yeah, well, and the issue with the C-suite not giving any sort of care is because the C-suite, they're going for the short-term dollar. They can see the dollar bill in front of them. They can shake the hand. They can see the contract come down, and that's great. But the problem is the lifeblood of college football has been the fan base for as long as it's been. You look at any sport right now, like most sports are really struggling to get people to care. Right, there's controversies even in the NBA around that Luka trade. There's like people saying, "Oh, they only did it to drive up ratings," and Adam Silver made it happen. It doesn't make sense. I'm not going to go that far to say that there's conspiracies, but like, yeah, it's that feasible that the NBA is having that many problems that they would force a trade like that because nobody's watching it anymore. Nobody cares about the NBA. They'll tune in for the finals, maybe the conference finals, but they're not going to tune in for a whole lot going on. Same thing with Major League Baseball. A lot of those stadiums stand empty for 162 games until kind of interesting series, or like Paul Skeens is in town or something like that. But you have a lot of sports that are kind of going by the wayside and dying off, and people not really caring anymore. And if college football isn't careful, right, the people who can make the decisions, if it's the conference leaders, if it's somebody in the NCAA, I know that they don't have any power anymore, really. If it's the executives over at the Mouse, whoever it is, if they're not careful, the money's going to dry up because the fans are going to stop caring. I've talked to so many people just kind of casually that know that we do the podcast, know that we talk college football, and that we're big college football guys. I talked to so many people casually that are just like, yeah, I don't really watch that much anymore. Like, yeah, I'll tune in for the big ones, the rivalry games, but I don't really watch as much as I used to. And it's sad because I can't blame them too much. I mean, we talked about conference realignment. We've talked about all of that. It just kind of stinks because we're losing the passion and the fan base. And this is another way that you're doing that, is you're killing one of the things that's always been fun, connects your fans to your team, gives, your fans access to the team. When those players rotate anyways, and then maybe they're only there for money, and then you're going to play who cares on the other side of the country, this just all takes away from it. And it's sad to watch the sport go this way.
They inevitably will find the boundary, right? And I think football is the one sport that so far has not bumped up against that glass ceiling, right? Where we've tapped out fan interest, right? The NFL continues to grow in its popularity. Now, maybe you're starting to see some folks sour on it based off of the Chiefs' latest run and, the officiating and all of that. I think there are some natural boundaries that do curb fan enthusiasm. And you're right, college football may be bumping into some of those sooner rather than later, but they have been able to go further than Major League Baseball or the NBA have been able to go. And you're right. I mean, the NBA is in absolute crisis mode. Do I think that college football or the NFL would ever get there? I tend to think that football, at least in the United States, there's much more of an appetite for that than, basketball is a global game, right? Basketball is not just a United States thing. But yeah, it is an interesting point, and it will be fascinating 10, 15, 20 years down the line to look at all the data points and be able to chart back, like with Major League Baseball, and figure out, oh my goodness, here are all the things that we did to actually shrink the game and make access terrible, and we didn't promote our star players and this, that, and the other. And to their credit, Major League Baseball has had a lot of green numbers over the last, I think, 2 or 3 seasons now where the game is growing.
Oh, yeah. That's getting better.
It's chess pieces moving around the board, and when you do make a misstep, there are real consequences. So we'll continue to obviously see how college football progresses.
Gracious him! How about